Black has often been cited as the worst color in the game, and that has definitely been true for the majority of the game's lifespan. Ever since it came out, Black has pretty much been the butt of every joke. But actually, in BT5, Black has surprisingly found sort of a niche as one of the strongest anti-meta decks in the game that you can play. It has great matchups into pretty much the entire field. So if you are someone who's looking to pick up a new deck here as we're finally coming towards the end of BT5, that will transition very well into BT6 since we are getting a lot of very strong black support in the double diamond set, then I think the black mid-range deck is an excellent choice. So we're going to go over what the deck wants to do and its strength, weaknesses, and some deck builds that you can go for. Alright, so what is the black color concept? Well, part of the reason that black had not been such a strong color in the past is because it didn't really have like a strong identity. It was just kind of like a hodgepodge of different keywords. But in BT5, we've kind of focused that down into the blocker keyword and the reboot keyword, especially if you can get them onto the same Digimon with inheritables, which you can definitely do in this mid-range black deck. Then the combination of the two on one strong level 6 or level 7 Digimon is very powerful and can grant you a lot of good advantage and tempo in the game. We also have access to the D-Digivolve keyword, which we mainly see on the Ultimate Flare option card. It's a very powerful form of removal that dodges on deletion effects, which is very strong. And also, we have access to a lot of large, big boys. They're tough to get rid of, high DP values, and they are not afraid to swing. So black is a very resilient color. You have a lot of options. It's definitely sort of a mid-range toolbox deck. If that's something that appeals to you, then I definitely suggest checking this deck out. Alright, so why exactly is it good all of a sudden? Why did black go from being the worst deck to actually topping quite a few regionals and events? Well, like I said previously, it has some very strong matchups into pretty much the entire field. Every single meta matchup is playable and winnable if you pilot your deck correctly and you know what your deck wants to do against theirs. So we're just going to run it down here against Lord Nightmon. Black has ways to increase their DP. Gogmamon is definitely a key card for that. And because of that DP increase, it makes it hard for Lord Nightmon to do its DP reduction and deletion shenanigans against you. So you kind of remove that aspect of their deck, and you also have access to your own removal that can get rid of Lord Nightmon itself, and oftentimes you're even big enough to just swing over it. So that gives you a very strong matchup into the deck. Against Rookie Rush, you have access to Ultimate Flare and Alter S, which are very powerful board wipes against the deck, and you can also slot in multiple copies of Mega Norimon comfortably since you are running a black deck, and you don't have to like tech out other cards and ruin your ratios by running that card. So if your locals has a lot of Rookie Rush players, you can bump up your Mechanori count and then run more Ultimate Flares or maybe even 1 or 2 Alter S's, and you'll probably be hard countering their deck. Against Imperial Dramon, you have access to big blockers, so pretty much any blocker that's over 7,000 DP is really hard for Imperial to deal with because it kind of ruins their Pale Dramon 3-attack combo. And you also have Chubon to block off their Hammer Sparks, which is pretty strong against Imperial. And again, you have access to strong removal, Millennium on Ultimate Flare, which Imperial has a hard time dealing with since it's pretty much a one-stack deck. Against Green, Reboot kind of gives you a built-in way to play around Nidhoggmon. Kind of forces them to have the Needle Spray plus Nidhogg in order to remove your big Reboot threats. So if you can set up like a large Digimon with Reboot, oftentimes that's enough to like swing and chip damage against Green and get the game off of that without having to be scared of the Nidhogg clap back. And finally, Security Control. Metal Garurumon from BT5 is a great card against Security Control since the effect is On Digivolve, you Digiburst 2, and then you can either delete one of their Digimon with play cost 6 or less, and then if they don't have a Digimon with play cost 6 or less on the field, you instead trash one of their securities. And I believe Security Control does not run any Digimon that have less than 6 play costs, so you're pretty much going to be always trashing a security against their deck, which is a very powerful effect against them, since you can get rid of one of their annoying option cards in their security. Maybe you'll get lucky, you'll even trash Resort Defeat out of there, so you don't have to deal with it, and you know, you can use that to just go for game when they weren't expecting it. It's definitely a very powerful effect against that deck. Alright, so just general strengths and weaknesses of the deck. Strengths, we'll start with that. You have your large sticky bodies. You have large DP values in your deck, and it can be very difficult for opponents to deal with that. You have access to strong removal that dodges on deletion effects in Millenniummon and Ultimate Flare, and also Alter S to an extent. You have the best level 7 toolbox. For whatever reason, a very large majority of the level 7s in the game digivolve from black, so you have a lot of different options to go for. You can tech out your deck in different ways. There are different ways to go with your level 7s that can change, you know, what you're trying to do to win the game. It can definitely throw your opponent off, especially when you play, I don't know, an Armageddonmon that they weren't expecting to turn off their Valdarm. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with your level 7s in this deck. And you have access to the Reboot plus Blocker combo on larger bodies. So level 6s and level 7s with Reboot plus Blocker, very difficult to deal with. Your opponent has to out it, otherwise you're going to be swinging every turn and always blocking one of their attacks, which is going to give you the tempo and advantage in the game. Weaknesses of the deck. The deck has no acceleration and very little draw power. As a result, the deck can feel slow. It can be hard to build up multiple stacks, and oftentimes if you fall behind in tempo, it's hard to make a comeback unless your opponent like plays into a really fat Ultimate Flare. That's pretty much your comeback mechanic in the deck. But other than that, you kind of have to hope that you curve out on turn, and that'll help you keep up in the game for sure. If you choose to run the level 7 toolbox stuff, you're going to be running 4 to 5 level 7s in your deck, which can lead to clunky hands. And in this deck, a clunky hand can be a death sentence, since, as mentioned previously, you don't have any real draw power outside of the Toy Agumon from the starter deck, which is conditional draw power, and you have no way to lower DP costs, or I'm sorry, evolution costs, or, you know, play guys for free. So it can be tricky to make that comeback if you have a clunky hand. All right. I guess in one of the matchups I didn't talk about, I'm going to circle back real quick, is purple. Your purple matchup is so-so because you are a slower deck. Oftentimes you can't kill them fast enough before they get their combo off. So you can Blastmon and just like security +1 them to death, hopefully. That's probably like your main way to get through the deck. But other than that, if there's a lot of Lilith loopers at your locals, maybe stay away from this one. But otherwise, I think it's a very strong deck. Alright, so before we move on, let's go over kind of the stronger cards in the deck. I guess I should mention, in case it wasn't already obvious, I won't be talking about Diaboromon or Commandramon decks in this video. Even though they are technically black decks, I think they actually kind of stand as their own like archetypes, and for that reason I might do separate videos on them. The Commandramon deck for sure I want to do a separate video on, because I think that deck is fun, it's cheap, and it can definitely win you some games. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to stick with the black mid-range level 7 toolbox deck that's been topping the regionals and stuff. Alright, so for your eggs, your choices are pretty much just Kapurimon ×4, +1000 if this Digimon has reboot. It definitely comes up, so play 4 of those. And then you have Kakenmon. If this Digimon is level 7, when it attacks, gain 1 memory. It's just a throwaway level 2. I guess you don't have to run this, but since your deck is slower, there are chances that you're going to just grind out a game and the 5th egg will come up, so consider just running the 1 of. Alright, level 3s, black actually has access to some pretty powerful level 3s. They have some strong inheritables that you want to keep in mind. So for that reason, sometimes there just isn't really room for vanillas. I think most lists run one or two just for like the value, but you can probably get away without running either of them. Sunarizamon. I think this is probably like one of the key reasons why Black was suddenly good in English BT5, because this is a promo that wasn't out in Japan BT5, I believe, or maybe it came out like towards the tail end of it, something like that. But essentially, it gives your Black Digimon with 13,000 DP or more piercing, which combos very well with your Blastmon especially. So I think that's why Blastmon is the best secondary level 6 to run, but we'll get into that when we get to level 6s. And the inheritable is that if it's a Black Digimon with 13,000 DP or more, you get Security +1. Again, very strong with Blastmon. You can even get Metal Garurumon up to 13,000 pretty easily. So this is a very powerful card that you should be running at least 3 to 4. It has gotten expensive, unfortunately, and there also really isn't like a good substitute for it. It's a pretty unique effect that is not really replaceable. If you still want to play Black, but you don't have access to Sunarizamons, instead what I would do is I would probably max out on your Toy Agumons and probably just vanillas after that. Your deck is going to be like significantly weaker, but there isn't really anything else that you can do that would be better. Alright, Toy Agumon from BT2, so from set 1. Just reboot inheritable, self-explanatory, play 4 of this one. And then Toy Agumon from the starter deck. At the end of your opponent's turn, if they didn't attack, you draw a card. This is basically your only draw power outside of just your one draw for your turn in Digivolving. And for that reason, I think it has merit of running at least 2 or 3 of this card. Especially if you can like stuff it under a blocker in like the first like 2 turns of the game, then you can dissuade them from attacking and you can get like that free draw off, which can help you for sure. So I think for that reason this card is worth playing. Chumon, opponent can't gain memory except with Tamer effects. We all know these cards are good. Play at least 2 of this. And then you have rookie blockers. So this is the Agumon and the Gatsumon. The difference is that the Gatsumon has 2,000 more DP, but you lose some memory when attacking. Agumon doesn't have that condition. I don't think you need to play these at all. You have way more options for blockers in this deck that these aren't really necessary. The Commandramon too, I guess. This is play cost 4, so it's just no. Okay, level 4s. The Vanillas, Numemon and Takemon. These are both good cards. I think most decks play a split, like 2 and 2. This one can help you with bricks. Play at least a total combination of 4 of these. So 2-2, 3-1, whatever. You can even run more. Blockers. You have a lot of level 4 blockers in Black. Sealsdramon is your standard. Play cost 5. Digivolve cost 2. 6,000 DP. And Dark Tyrannomon is your 5,000 DP. 1 costs 2 Digivolve. These are the standard blockers every deck has access to. They're still good in Black, and I think they're probably still your best options, just generically speaking. Guardramon. This one is interesting because it has 7,000 DP. So this, if you have a lot of Imperial players at your locals, I actually think this card has merit. It also, for what it's worth, requires 1 more Digimon to die to a Spiral Masquerade. So all the other blockers die to 2 Digimon Spirals. This one, they have to have 3. So I guess that's worth mentioning. It can't attack, so in that case, it's kind of competing for a slot with Mechanorimon, I feel like. And I think for the most part, you get better value out of Mechanorimon because of its restand ability. Alright, Kurtasarimon, strictly worse than Mechanorimon, I feel like. Unless I think you play this in Diaboromon because it's an identified unknown type. I'm not sure though. Don't quote me on that. I don't know a lot about Diaboromon decks. Mechanorimon, this card is very good. It is a little situational, but especially against Rookie Rush, it's a great floodgate card. They can remove it, and it sucks when they do, but it can stall and, earn you a couple turns that you probably wouldn't have had otherwise. Shademon comes out of security and is a blocker that can attack. I think you still play Mechanorimon over Shademon. Maybe in security control decks, I think sometimes they play this card, but in just a standard black deck, I don't think you have room for it over your other blockers. And then this Greymon and Black Gaugumon are essentially the same card. The inheritable is while this Digimon has reboot, it gains jamming. I think this was better before, but now the guys that you're swinging with are so big that the jamming doesn't really matter. It only comes up if you're running like the level 5 rebooters, which you probably shouldn't be, but if you wanted to, you could, and if you were, then you would play these, but we'll get into that. Alright, level 5s, Warumanzemon is your only 2-cost Digivolution card in black, so you definitely play this card. Play cost 5 also can help you out with bricks. It's not great because if you're forced to hard play Warumanzemon and then go into Metal Garuru, you can't get the Digiburst off and it feels really bad, but it's still worth playing just for the level 2, or for the 2-cost Digivolve, I mean. Play at least 3, you can definitely also play 4. Gogmamon, this is the best level 5 in your deck. At first glance I thought this card was like shit. I don't know, I'm just bad apparently, but this card is actually amazing. Digiburst 1, so you can get the effect off 3 times if you raised it from hatching area, so 2, 3, 4, that's 3 Digibursts you can get off, plus 2000 DP. So this card, if you Digiburst and give the boost to itself, it can get to 13,000 DP, which can give it piercing if you happen to have a Tsunorizumon on your board, or you can use Zubagon Punch on it. Definitely a very interesting card. And the inheritable is also extremely good because it's all turns plus 1000 DP. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Helps you dodge getting attacked over, helps you dodge Lord Nightmon removal, just lets your if you get like blocker on your level 7, makes you really big, hard to deal with. I think this card is absolutely fantastic, and you can divide the plus DP to different cards. It doesn't have to be to itself, so you for sure play 4 of this card. This is like one of the key cards in the deck. Metal Greymon and Black Gaugumon. These are kind of the same card, so they both have reboot. So they let you activate the jamming on the level 4 Greymon and Gaugumon. So obviously there's the flavor there, since they digivolve off of those cards, canon-wise. And they're inheritable. The Metal Greymon gives security plus 1 if you have reboot, and the Black Gaugumon gives plus 2000 DP if you have reboot. For what it's worth, if I had to play one of these cards, I think the Black Gaugumon probably would come up more, just because since the Metal Garurumon is your level 6 that inherently has reboot, that's probably going to come up more often, and I would rather swing with the 14,000 DP Digimon than an 11,000 DP Digimon with security plus 1, because it'll probably just die to checking anyways. 14,000 is a good number to swing with. You probably won't die with that. But I honestly don't think you have room for these cards, because you have to play 4 Gogmamons, and then you have to play 3 to 4 Warumanzemons, and then I think the last level 5 that you should be slotting into your deck is Megadramon, inheritable blocker. Self-explanatory. You can make your level 6s and level 7s blockers. It's really good. Alright, and you play 1 or 2 of this card. Andromon is just your level 5 blocker, 7000 DP. I just think you have a lot more options for blockers in black, especially since you can make your level 6s and 7s blockers with Megadramon. So I think this card has kind of lost its luster and not worth playing anymore. Level 6s, Metal Garurumon, BT5. This is probably the reason that black is actually even worth considering right now, along with Tsunorizumon. Reboot, keyword, and then when digivolving, Digiburst 2, and then delete a Digimon with play cost of 6 or less, and if you can't do that, then instead you trash one of their security. It's a really good value card. You can only get the effect off once, unfortunately, and after that it kind of becomes a vanilla. But there are other things you can do with this, especially since it has reboot. So you can put blocker under it. If there's a Gogmamon under it, it can hit 13,000. And then if there's a Tsunarizumon under it, then you get security +1. You get plus 1,000 DP from the Kapurimon. So ideally you have Kapurimon, Gogmamon, and the Metal Garurumon. That's your stack, because you have to G-Burst 2 to use the effect, so you'll be Digibursting your level 3 and your level 4. And then that way you have a 13,000 DP guy. Tsunarizumon can then give it piercing, or if you want, instead, you can Digiburst off the Kapurimon, leave the Tsunarizumon in the stack, and then if you had used the Gogmamon's effect that turn as well to give it another plus 1,000, then you can get the security +1. So I think there's a lot of things that you can do with this card, and it has a lot of synergy with the other cards in the deck. This is your 4 of main level 6 for sure. Secondary level 6s, you either play Blastmon or you play Hyandramon. So Hyandramon is just the value vanilla, 12,000 DP. You can make a 13 with the Gogmamon. 2 cost to Digivolve lets you turbo into your level 7s. That's pretty self-explanatory. The one that needs more convincing, and I know when people see why doesn't Blastmon suck, Blastmon does not suck. I think Blastmon's actually, funnily enough, good. So it has security +1, and the part that makes people think that this is a bad card is that your opponent can redirect your attack to one of their unsuspended Digimon. Keyword unsuspended. So they have to leave one of their Digimon unsuspended in order to block Blastmon with it. But the cool thing about Blastmon is that it has 13,000 DP just right off the gate. So it already synergizes with Tsunarizumon. If you can get a Blastmon and a Tsunarizumon out on your board, that's very, very powerful, because then your Blastmon has piercing. So that means your opponent doesn't even want to block it anymore, and they just take the security +2, or security +1, 2 checks. I mean, it's very strong, and it kind of puts them on a clock. You can also Zubagon Punch Blastmon, which, flavor, that works. Between Blastmon and Hyandramon, you can make arguments for both, for sure. I like Blastmon personally. Even though it's 1 more to Digivolve, 3 to Digivolve for level 6 is pretty standard. And you can synergize with some of the other cards in your deck pretty well. A lot more so than Hyandramon would anyways. So for that reason, my vote goes to Blastmon. Play 3. So either play 3 Blastmon or play 3 Hyandramon. Or I guess you could do some weird 2-1 split, however way you want to go for it. But yeah, these are probably your best options for secondary level 6s. Tech level 6s. Braiwa Ludramon. I think this one's kind of funny. It gives you another blocker inheritable. I think that's self-explanatory. And it's also 10 play cost, so it can kind of fill the niche of Hyandramon, where if you bricked out your hand, you can just hard slam this guy. Could be good. I don't know. Could be good. Craniamon. This card will be very good next set, but this set, it has its niche potential. It's 12,000 DP and it has blocker, so it's a big blocker boy. And all turns, your Digimon with blocker can't be deleted by opponent's effects. Unfortunately, it still dies to Lord Nightmon DP reduction stuff, so that's kind of what makes it a weaker card this format. But if you're playing against a lot of security controls, then this card has a lot of value. So consider that if your meta has a lot of security control players. War Greymon has blocker and reboot built in. I just don't think you need it. You have ways to get reboot onto your level 6s, and you have ways to get blocker in your level 6s, so it's just kind of outvalued by other cards that you could be playing. Black War Greymon, security +1 and reboot. So I guess this could kind of take the place of what Blastmon's trying to do. The problem I have with it is it's 1 more to Digivolve. 4 cost is pretty expensive. You're going to be passing the turnover for the most part, especially since you don't have ways to gain memory in black outside of your Tamer, so you're most likely just going to be at 3 every turn. So that's already a con against this card. and it also has 1000 less DP. So just right off the bat, doesn't combo with Tsunorizumon like built in. This one has reboot, so I guess if you have a Kapurimon underneath it or a Gagumon, then you can hit the 13. But that's just another condition that you have to meet that Blossom does not. So bear that in mind. Crescarurumon reboot, and then when digivolving, for every card on your opponent's side of the field, you can check a top card of your deck and then play a level 5 or less among them. So only one. And this card's kind of doo-doo, dude. Like, I think we all know Crescarurumon's kind of doo-doo. It whiffs so much. I guess it could come up against Lord Nightmon, but at that point, like, if you have to Crescarurumon for an out, you're probably losing. And your level 5s don't have, like, awesome effects. Like, if you hard play them like that. Like, Gagumon, you need a Digiburst, and Warumon's a vanilla, and Megajamon, I guess that would probably be the best one you can get off of the effect. You get blockers, I guess. But again, you can only call one card off Crescarurumon, so it's just a bait. I wouldn't go for it. Alright, all the other level 6s aren't really worth talking about. So yeah, pretty much just 4 of this, and then 3 of either of these 2 cards. You can make arguments for Brywiludramon and Craniumon, but nah. Alright, level 7s. Like I mentioned previously, you have the access to the most different level 7s out of any deck in this game. Millenniummon is probably the better one that you can play. So it's just spin a card at the bottom of their deck and it dodges a removal once. So if it dies, if it has cards underneath it, it comes back from the trash. It's an absolutely fantastic card. You can just play Millennium, beat down, and then if you get blocker and reboot on it, then it's just an impossible card to deal with. Super good level 7. I think you definitely play 2 of these. At least play 1, but a very strong argument for 2. Omnimons. You can play 3 different Omnimons in this deck. 4, I guess. Alter S is Digivolve 1 everything, and then anything 5000 DP or less gets destroyed. This is very good against Rookie Rush in particular. So if there are a lot of Rookie Rushers at your locals, definitely play Alter S. I think you can get away without playing it though. Alright. Omnimon's Wart. This card is an absolute brick shit house in this deck. So, I mean, you can call back blockers, you can call back your Warumonzemons, you can call back your Megajamon, and then play another level 6 on top of it and have a huge blocker. This is just a fantastic card. I think you definitely play 1. Tough to make an argument for 2, since I think Millenniummon just has more general value in the 2 of slot, but for sure this card is fantastic in this deck. Omnimon's Wart Defeat. I think this is kind of its own flavor of black mid-range, is the Zwart Defeat X antibody combo. So what you do is, like, for your level 7s, you just play 4 Zwart Defeats to increase the chance that they're in your security, and then you play 1 to 2 X antibodies, so that way you can potentially just cheese it out and win the game that way. Because if you cheese a Zwart Defeat early on in your security and then digivolve it into an X antibody, especially like in the first like 3 or 4 turns of the game, that's almost always a GG angle. Almost always a GG angle. It's so hard for your opponent to deal with that shit. Especially since you'll be able to attack with your X antibody the turn you digivolve into it, most likely, since it will be 3 cost for digivolving it on top of Omnimon Zwart Defeat. Absolutely insane. So I think that's like the high roll version of the deck, is just the 4 Zwart Defeat, like 2 X antibodies for your level 7s, because I think you're losing out on a lot of like toolbox value from the other level 7s that you could be playing instead. And I think Zwart Defeat as like a 1 or 2 of kind of loses some of its value because there's less of a chance of you hitting it in security, which is, you know, definitely one of the reasons you play the card. The on-digivolve effect of destroying a Tamer is obviously good, but I think sacking it in security is one of the reasons that we all like to play this card. It's just such a big dopamine hit when you do get it off. Alright, other level 7s, Armageddonmon. This one's kind of strange, but the pros of this card is that it's 15,000 DP and it's only 3 to digivolve. And the rush effect doesn't matter in this deck. That only comes up in Diomorphon decks. And the all turns when Digivolving effect of level 7 Digimon don't activate is interesting. I've never gotten it off personally, but in theory, I guess you could. Like, it'll stop Valder Arms, it'll stop other Millenniumons, it'll stop Zwarts, it'll stop Zwart Defeat, I guess, from killing your Tamer. It's an interesting card. You wouldn't play more than one, and because you wouldn't only play more than one, then the effect doesn't really come up that often. So, hit or miss for me on this card. I don't play it. Honestly, the best part about it is just the 3-cost Digivolve, and that's a fat beat stick. Take that for what you will. Chaosmon, pretty interesting because it's the only level 7 with piercing, and it kind of acts as a pseudo removal since it can swing over anything to turn you Digivolve into it. I like this card actually. I think you can definitely get away with it, especially if you can get Reboot and Blocker underneath it. And then you have Reboot, Blocker, and Piercing on one card. It's very, very strong. So don't sleep on Chaosmon. I think you can play probably one of this card. And last but not least, the fan favorite, Ragnalordmon. If you're playing Briwa Ludramon in your level 6s, I think you can actually justify a Ragna. Security attack +1 and Reboot, just inherit, is a pretty good effect. And if you're playing the Briwa Ludramons, there's a chance that you can cheese this card out for free. So who knows, then it would have security attack +1 Reboot and Blocker. And it's 14,000 DP. I think that's pretty strong. So there are better things you can be doing with your level 7s. I just think this is funny. Alright. Tamers, Taikamiya, and Izzy Izumi, they both set you to 3. Izzy lets you look at your top 3, and then if they're all black, you gain a memory. Notably, this works on your opponent's turn when they check it in security, so it's kind of like a pseudo hammer spark, and it can kind of move the memory counter over to your turn when they weren't expecting it, so that's pretty interesting. And I think for that reason, you probably play this one over Tai. Tai is your black Digimon get +1000 DP on your opponent's turn, which can come up, let's say, in Lord Knight matchup, or just by boosting your blockers and letting them cover things that they normally wouldn't be able to. I just think you get more value of Izzy overall, so play 2 or 3 of this card. Final Zubagon Punch. I think this card is hilarious and actually pretty good. It only costs 2. And it gives Blocker, Reboot, and Security Attack +1 if the Digimon hits 16,000 DP after its 3,000 DP boost. I said that backwards, but you guys know what I mean. This works with Blastmon. It works with a Metal Garurumon that has a +1000 DP inheritable underneath it, which you run Kapurimon and Gogmamon. You can boost up a Gogmamon to 13,000 DP with its own effect on itself, and then put Zubagon Punch on it. I think that's funny. It works on all your level 7s. I think it's just a good card that can kind of come out of nowhere and then just put you in a very advantageous position. Unfortunately, there isn't really room in the deck for more than one, if that, because I do think you're probably better off running multiple copies of Ultimate Flare. Digivolve 3, and then delete anything play cost 3 or less after that. It's just your best removal option in this deck, and probably one of the better removals in the game right now overall. Alright, so those are pretty much all the viable cards you could be playing. Here is my example list. This is what I've been running, and it has been doing pretty well for me. So you see your 4 Kapurimons and 1 Kakenmon, 4 Toyagus, 3 Cinerizas, 3 Toyagu starter deck, and 2 Chumon and 1 Hagurumon. This is pretty standard. I basically net deck this, so I'm not going to explain it. Level 4s, split on the Numamon and Tankmon. This has worked out perfectly for me. I don't see Numamon too much. I don't see Tankmon too much. I see them when I want to see them. 4 Dark Tyrannos, that's the 1-cost Digivolve value. I think it's good to max out on these. And then for my other blockers, it's 2 Mechanoris and 1 Sealsdramon. I think you could make an argument for 3 Sealsdramon and 1 Mechanorimon, but I have some rookie rushers at my locals lately, so I kind of did this instead. And it works out fine. Having to digivolve into Mechanori for your level 4 does feel bad, so just bear that in mind when you're running more than one. Alright, level 5s. Yeah, level 5s, 4 Gogmamon, mandatory, and just 3 Wormanzu and 2 Megadramon. I think one of the first lists I saw that top of this deck was doing 4-1, and I can definitely see that being a good play just because sometimes you need that 2-cost Digivolve, especially since this is a deck that doesn't run memory boosts, and you really only have room for like 2 Izzies. Your Tamer is not that good anyway, so you don't run more than that, so having just the value is good. But I like the blocker inheritable, so I run 2 of those. Works for me. Level 6s, 4 Metal Garurumons and 3 Blastmons. As I mentioned before, I think Blastmon has a lot of value that you really wouldn't see just like right off the bat, but when you play with it, you notice that it does exert a lot of pressure, and if you can combo it with a Tsunarizumon on the board, then you get also the piercing, which kind of negates the drawback of the card. Level 7s. So for my level 7s, I chose to run 2 Millenniumon. I think this card is absolutely insane right now. For whatever reason, people forgot about this card, so it can kind of come in out of nowhere and like surprise people by removing their card without getting their weird on deletion effects, or just getting over a card that they didn't think that you could get over. So for sure, play 2 of this. I love this card. Omnimon's Wort, the card is really good when you get it off. I wouldn't necessarily play more than one just because it doesn't have any... I guess it does have removal from its on-attacking effect, but since you're not playing Lilith Loop and it's hard to get to 6 memory in this deck, you're not going to attack on the same turn you play it, or Digivolve it, I mean. So it's kind of slower in this deck, but... just getting the 2 Digimon calls off the on Digivolve effect is very strong. So for that reason, you definitely play 1. And lastly, so I've actually been playing Chaosmon in this slot because I don't own an Alter S, but I think in my playtesting, there's been times where I've had the Chaosmon and I wished it were an Alter S, and I don't necessarily think the same is true the other way around. So if you have access to Alter S, I would play it in the slot, and if you don't, I think the best replacement for it is the Chaosmon. Especially since Zubagon Punch with Chaosmon is hilarious. Yeah, 2 Izzies. You can not play the Zubagon Punch and play 3 Izzies instead. But I just have a soft spot for this card, and it is a good card, and it does win games. So it's not like some like cheese. It's actually good. It's like a aged Gouda, I guess you could say. And 2 Ultimate Flares. If you see a lot of Ricky Rushes or you just want removal, you can take out a Zubagon Punch and play 3 Flares. So this is kind of like your tech spot. You can take out this and play 1 more of these or another Digimon or something. Alright, so the other version, for the most part, the bottom end of this deck stays the same. Where you really have a lot of play is your level 7s. I think the version that I had talked about previously with the Zord Defeats and the X Antibodies is probably the only other really viable way to play this deck. So these would all just be 4 Zord Defeats, and then I would take out a Zubagon Punch, and I would take out a level 4. So right now I'm playing 12 level 4s. Instead, I would play 11 level 4s, and then I would use those 2 slots to play the 2 X Antibodies. Alright, so that's pretty much Black mid-range. Right now in BT5, it's a very fun deck to play. You definitely have to use your brain when you're playing it, and you have great matchups into most of the meta, and especially the most popular decks. So for that reason alone, it's worth checking out, and it's not even that expensive to build right now. So because all the cards are going down outside for the Tsunarizumon. But if you are planning to play Black in BT6, you're probably going to need the Tsunarizumons anyways. Black gets a huge boost in BT6. It's probably going to be a tier 1 deck. So you have the Royal Knight Black deck is what it's going to be called. So you have Alphamon and Genkumon, and then Craniumon, which is also Royal Knight, as your boss monsters. And then there's also just a lot of other cards that come in from the set. There's the I forget what it's called, but it's the level 3. If it's checked in security, you Digivolve one, so it's kind of like a security option and a Digimon in one. That's a good card. You get the new decoy mechanic, so if one of your other Digimon would be destroyed, you can destroy the decoy instead. You get access to Iron Fisted Onslaught, which is an insane removal card. Delete all your opponent's Digimon with the highest play cost. It's pretty much just a Gaia Force that has the potential to be AoE. I think that's pretty insane. And you'll be seeing this card also in security control decks, unfortunately. But yeah, I think black is going to be one of the better colors in BT6. You're going to have really good matchups into the field. I definitely recommend it. So especially right now, if you're bored and you don't know what you want to be doing in BT5 right now in the last extra month of this format, and you don't know what you want to do for BT6, definitely consider black. I think it's a fun deck and it has future potential and you'll have a good time. Alright guys, hope you learned something. Hope you go to your locals and win with your black deck and have some GGs.